Welcome to Sparks by Vinofunk. I'm Jeroen, wine writer and we're SAT Level 3 wine expert. And today we're talking about port. Port? Who wants to talk about port? Well, we want to talk about port. Port is from Portugal and we have a very nice winemaker from Copke. And we're here with Carla Tiago from Zezovinos. That's part of they make it the port of Copke. Welcome, Carla.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you very much for making time for me. You sent these 4 beautiful bottles, but I see in your background there are many more bottles because it's not a virtual background, eh?
No, 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 at all. This is the tasting room of Kopke.
Perfect. And can you tell me something about who you are and what you do at the winery?
Okay, so I'm one of the winemakers for Kopke. Kopke is the oldest portrait house. So it was established in 1638, and since that time we've been producing wine. So all over these decades, years, many different people work in these wines. And right now, I have the privilege to be one of them. So I'm not alone, of course. We are a great team that we work together for a long, long time. And our job right now is to make sure that we are well taking care of all these old wines that we have in our cellars and making sure that we are producing new ones for the next generation. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's a tough job because how long do you work in this winery?
So my first harvest, it was in 2005. And at that time, Sojevinos didn't have Kopk yet. So I made this harvest for Callum. And then in 2006, when Sojevinos bought Kopk, I also did I worked during the harvest. And then in 2007, they invited me to work with them. I started in Douro Valley with still wines. At that time, I was working with Francisco Gonçalves and Ricardo Macedo, that right now is the responsible for all the still wines. And since 2012, I also started to work with port wines. So since 2022, I'm the winemaker responsible for the port wines. Because Carlos Alves, that is the master blend, right now is our director of enology and port wine. So of course he's always in the tasting room with me, but they need someone that should be more focused on the daily thing. So that's me.
And what is your philosophy of making wine at Sorsovinos?
So, well, we have different brands, port wine brands, and each of them that has its own profile. Of course, it all starts in the vineyards. So all of them have different vineyards where we pick the grapes to produce these wines. We have our own states, but at the same time, we also buy grapes from different producers that work with these companies for decades and centuries. So. Uh, well, our job is to make sure that every year we produce the best wines that we can with these grapes. So to produce a port wine, well, you have to be fast, you have to be quite precise, and you have to make sure that during all this time and especially because the fermentations are quite short in time, you you extract everything that you need. So basically, it's like intense and soft to make sure that the final wine is going to be perfect for age
And
for
what makes
decades.
Kapke unique among other port wine makers?
I think, well, of course, being the oldest one is something quite remarkable, but I think one of the things that really distinguish us from others is that um, well, we are very well known for our old townies and old whites. So COP perhaps is the company that has more different years of colheitas, and colheitas are port wines that from one single year that age in barrels, but not only for tawnies, but also the whites. So we have many different wines, white wines aging also in barrels. So perhaps I think that's what makes us so special. Of course, all the other wines are beautiful, like the Ruby style, vintage, but these ones are quite unique and singular for sure.
Yeah, and I got two white and two, I think, red wines, well, tawny wines. Uh, but when we start in the white, because I think, well, I hope I'm correct, we start with tasting the white wines and then other
Yes.
varieties. Uh, what can you tell me about the key differences? Because this is a white Colheita 2014, and this is a Kopka 10-year-old old white port,
White.
aged
Yes.
aged in matured in wood.
Yeah. So these are two whites that and they are very different. So the first one is a Colheita. So Colheita means it's always a wine from one single year, and the year that appears in the front of the bottle is the year of the harvest. And this one, if it's written Colheita, means that this one has been aging in barrels, in wood, always by a very, very, very slow oxidation. That's what we want from these barrels. We always use very old barrels to make sure that this process is very, very slow. So the Colheita from 2014 is a wine that you can legally you can start bottling it 7 years after the harvest. In COP, you only start to do it 10 years. So that means that the first time that we bottled a 2014 white, it was last year. So this year we are going to bottle for the first time the 2015 white and tawny. We also we do both of them every year. So these are wines that when we only bottle them by demand of the client when we have a request. So that means that every time that we bottle it, it's going to be a unique wine. So you can have like a 2014 bottle last year, and you can always see the year of the bottling in the back label. We always put year of the bottling. So in that way you can always know how many years it stayed in the barrel, because we only put these wines in the bottle when you request. Okay, so that's the year when we put it in the bottle. So you can have a 2014 bottle last year or this year, or bottle in 20 years, and it's going to be the same wine but with more 10 years in the barrel. So it's going to be different. It's a wine that's always changing. The 10 years white is a blend, and in port wine, when we say that it's a 10 years old wine, it means that it's a wine that has a profile of a wine that has been 10 years in the barrel. Okay. And who decides that is the Institute of Port Wine, chemically and by tasting. They decide which blends that we send them can be bottled as a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40, or a 50 years old. So this blend, we do this blend every year. And we have to make sure that this new blend is going to be very, very similar to the last one. So that means that we hope that every time that you taste a 10 years old white, you'll have the same experience. So you can imagine these wines as an infinite blend. I'm sorry. So that's the big difference. So 2014 is always going to change. Every time that you taste it, it's always going to be different. A 10 years old or a 20 or 30 or a 40, well, we hope that you will always have the same experience. So it's a finished wine. Okay.
And this finished wine is bottled for always, and this one is only bottled when the demand is there.
No, not really. Both of them, we only bottle them when our clients request.
Okay,
So
but
yeah.
this doesn't this doesn't age or change, but this one changes over the years.
Yes. Well, during a year, of course, the 10 years old is going to change a little bit. If we bottle in the beginning of the year or the end of the year, but it's not, you are not going to notice as the 2014. The ones that we bought in the beginning of the year or the end of the year, the difference is not going to be huge. But like in 10 years, it's going to be a big difference.
Yeah. So this is a blend of different kind of years and also different kind of grapes.
Yes.
And this one, the 2014, is only grapes from 2014 that harvested in 2014. But is it a single variety grape or are there different kinds of grapes inside?
Well, normally, it's different, but it's very difficult to talk about like the quantities of grapes that we use in each of the blends. Why? Well, in Douro Valley, you can use more than 100 different varieties. 30 of them are white, and sometimes, well, we have some parcels that have only one variety, but we also have many field blends in Douro Valley. Some of them very old, and we don't really know exactly the varieties that we have, not even the percentages of it. So normally, when we talk about these wines, we talk about the grapes that we know that we have there in more quantity, like Malvasia Fina for sure. These ones that we select for age, Gouveia, Vinhozinho, Orinto, Rabigado. So normally grapes that gives you plenty of acidity and structure. That's what you need in a wine if you want to age it for a long time.
So it's very difficult, I understand, but how does the terroir expression is different between these kind of wines, between these two?
Yeah, so when we think how we are going to do these wines, we always think like, well, 10 years old is a wine that is going to be ready quite fast. So 10 years, more or less. When we think in a colheita, well, this is going to be a wine that will age for decades, we hope, in barrels. So normally, we are going to use grapes from the highest places where you can have a better acidity and freshness, but at the same time, a good concentration. And uh, and sometimes to make the perfect blend for that year, we use grapes from the highest places, exactly for the freshness and acidity, and some of them from the lowest one, so you can have some concentration. So all these things are, I think, before the harvest. We do these different wines separately, and in the end, before we decide the final blend to age, we do this blend with different wines. So all the fermentation is made with skins, so we can extract everything, all the flavors, and the fermentation takes place like between 4 and 5 days, and after that we press it, we put the spirit to make sure we stop the fermentation, and these wines are going to rest during the winter in Douro. Only after that we start to bring them to Vila Nova de Gaia, where they are going to age.
And and I saw these two wines, and the closing was different because one has a wax capsule. So I thought, okay, will I put my well my
Uh,
how do you call it in English?
uh, um, something to take the cork. Okay.
Yeah. But I thought, okay, something to
No, but it's
put
not.
out the
It's not.
decor.
It's about all of them have white top
Yeah,
cork.
but because I started with this one, I thought, okay, it's simple. I thought, okay, let's. I will put in a knife. I managed to take it out, so I opened the wax, and I opened it. But how how do people know it? Why do you
Well,
use the wax on it?
normally we use the wax when it's like a more premium wine. And the truth is that for us, collators are quite precious. And most of the port wine companies don't do collators because you have to keep them for a long time in your cellar. So it's quite expensive. It's like a huge project. You know, you always have to think in the next decades. Uh, but Coke always made that. So when we start in this company and we start to see all these old wines, we knew that we wanted to make sure that we were going to continue that. So every year we select wines to age as a Colheita Tawny or a Colheita White, and to distinguish them because they are collators, in both of them use wax. So that's why.
That's why.
It's more, perhaps it's like a style thing more than, it's not scientific. It's not, because it doesn't have like um a scientific purpose. It's more a marketing one, for
Yeah.
sure.
And when people see, okay, we're drinking 4 different kind of port wines, when do people have to decide, okay, I want to choose this one or this one or this one? How can people decide which one they want?
I think to begin, they have to taste all of them. Okay. So only after that you can decide what you want to have. Uh, but one of the things that we always try to challenge people is like, try them, and yes, they are great solo. Like at the end of the day, after a meal, even during desserts, they are sweet wines for sure. But they also have one thing that I think it's quite special in Kopk, is that after you drink it, you don't feel this sweetness in your mouth. You feel like more freshness, like because the acidity and the sweetness is very well balanced. So we always challenge people to, well, try it with food. Why not? I have to find different times, different moments to have these kind of wines. And the truth is that when people start to try them with different things, they really appreciate them. You are not going to drink port wine every day with your meal, of course, but once in a while, I think you can have like great experience. So 2014, if you taste it, it's like you still feel the fruitiness of it. So it's quite fresh. Um, it compare with the 10 years old, it seems much younger than 10 years old. And the reason is because, well, this 2014 is still a baby. Okay, so it's in the beginning of all this aging process, and the 10 years old, it's already a finished wine. So it's a blend, and when we and the Cop always had this profile of blends. So this 10, 20, 30, 40, and right now the 50 years old, they were created not a long time ago, but um, when they were created, uh, the profile was already thought. So it's like a wine where you can find like the honeycomb flavors, some dry flowers, some peach, dry peach. So this is the kind of wine that it has all the things that you are expecting in a wine that age for 10 years in the barrels. This 2014, or if you try right now the 2015, they are very young. They still show much of the fresh fruit, some tropical fruit too. So perhaps you could have them in different times, like 2014, perhaps at the end of the day, quite like chilled before dinner. And at 10 years old, you can have it like with a starter, like foie gras, or even with a salad. So something like everything that has like sweetness and spiciness normally works very well with like curry, something like that. So these kind of wines, the truth is that to identify the moment to drink them, you first have to taste them. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm very excited to taste. But before we're going to taste, You said you also make wines of 50 years old?
Yes.
Wow, that's very old.
Yes, it is. And right now, we also have like a very, very old port that is more than 8 years old. Kopke has very many different wines that are aging like for decades in our cellars. So, to have an idea, the oldest white that we have in barrel that we are still bottling is a 1934. And then we have the 35 white and red. The 35 white, it's a dry port, so it's quite amazing. It's very elegant. It's beautiful. We have the 37, the 38, we have the 40, 41. 41, we have the 50, 51, 52, 53, the very, very small amount, 57, 58, well, and so on. So the Cop always had these beautiful wines that are aging in barrels separately, with different identities. So uh, it's, it's amazing.
So you're not only a winemaker, but also a wine keeper, a wine guardian, because you want to keep them in the perfect conditions. So you're like a wine bodyguard also, and the
Yes.
bodyguard of the heritage and the history.
Yes, that's so one of our main jobs is to make sure that you are really taking care of these ones. And every time that you make a new blend of 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 years old, um, you have to make sure that you are leaving wines. So in the next year, you can reproduce something very similar to the one that you are doing. So in Kopke, you have all range of different ports that you can taste.
Perfect. And when we taste, because we already discussed what kind of types of glasses do you use, I had some standard white wine glasses
Yes.
because in restaurants you have like these very tiny glasses. I don't like them, but so your opinion is just use white wine glasses.
Yes, I think it's the perfect choice because that small ones normally don't leave you space to smell and to have the proper uh the proper experience. Like you need some space so your wine can show all the flavors that they have. So these ones are great. And like for old ports, even for tawny style or even ruby style, I always recommend them to chill them. These are wines that have 20% of alcohol. They have around 100 grams of sugar per liter. So when you chill them, you are going to feel less the alcohol, you are going to feel less the sugar and more the acidity. So everything is going to be more balanced. That's the perfect way to have them.
And if you look at the color, the 2014 is much lighter than the 10-year-old.
Yes. Normally, uh, when they are younger, and the 2014, they have this golden color, but the 14, it's a little bit lighter than the 10 years old, always. When you
Oh,
go for the 20s, normally the color is much more similar that in this case.
and the smell is very complex, full of aromas, very like perfume, blossom, orange peel, but also a lot of lemon peel, lime. And if you smell very good, also a lot of peach, almond, uh, like a bit of cookie dough. But it's very complex, but it a lot of dry fruit, but
Yes.
it's very fresh also at the same time. Normally you have dry, sweet, but not a lot of freshness.
Yes, that's one of the things that we always try to input in this wine. So we want them like um, very complex, but at the same time fresh. So you can drink it, you feel the sweetness in the beginning, but then in the end, it seems like all your mouth is very, very fresh and you want to continue to drink. Of course, you have to be careful, okay? They have 20% of alcohol, but Um, well, when sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't like port wine. It's boring. It's sweet." Well, it's not boring at all. And the sweetness, of course, it's a sweet wine, but you have to look for the ones that are more balanced, that have this acidity, that makes your mouth. How you say in English? I'm not sure, but well, basically, you want to keep drinking without being heavy or full or boring with that.
Yeah, it fills your mouth, but also refreshes your mouth a lot
Yeah.
because the freshness is there. There's a lot of acidity, and how a lot of people know port is just you have a bottle in your cupboard, staying there for a couple of weeks, maybe some months. Drink it too warm, but you have
Yeah.
to chill it and drink it fresh. Open it up and yeah, don't drink it in one time, but don't, yeah, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, but not longer.
Yes. Like for these ones that are already, these are oxidized ones. Okay, so the oxidation here is very slow, and that's what permit us to have all these different layers of flavors. After you open it, what you can do is like cork it very well, put it in the fridge or in a very cold and dry place. You can have it like for 2, 3 months, 4 months without any kind of problem. That's one of the great things of these wines is that uh, you can keep it, and that's why they have this bar top um, cork. It means that you can open it, you can cork it, and you can keep it for some months without any kind of problem. So you can have only a little bit every night before go to sleep and to relax.
That's what at the end of your or of your meal or at the start, because when when I smelled it, I thought, okay, this could also be very nice with oysters
Yes.
or with some shellfish or mussels, but not too heavily cooked, and not too many flavors to freshen it up. So you can also start with this kind of wines.
Yeah, something salty normally goes very well. Even like Jerez. Jerez, they have these salty wines that normally they have it with jamon, and even white port wine goes very well with that kind of thing. So salty things, spicy things, and normally I think always a good pairing.
Yeah, port and sherry are not so different in that kind of way in food pairing.
Yes, in food pairing, I think most of the things that the wines are quite different, but the truth is that you can have uh, equal pairings. They have some things that they touch themselves that normally works very well.
I love it very much. It's very fresh, it's sweet, but it's also very complex, but it's very youthful. It's well, we're now in 2025, so it's 11 years old, but it still feels very light and fresh, youthful. It's very nice. I'm very curious about this one because this
Yeah.
one is at, okay, it's 10 years old, but it's much darker.
Yes.
And when you smell it, it's much richer, more concentrated, more dried fruit, more like almonds, marzipan.
Yes. Yes, much more for that. And you can have that in the 2014, but here is more concentrated. It seems like you have it in more quantity. So this is the profile of our 10 years old. So here you start to have all the things um, that they are expected in this kind of wine. So when you go for the 20 years old, it's going to be a little bit more concentrated than this one, and you start also to have like more spiciness in it and more orange peel. That normally after 20 years in the 30s, it's very common. So even like the sweetness in the nose start to disappear. It's like more spiciness that you are going to find. Of course, the sweetness in the mouth is still there, but in the nose, it's not so obvious.
Well, I want to taste. I forgot it in the other glass, but salute, prost,
Salute.
prost,
In Portuguese, it's saúde, and
salute,
prost for you in yours.
salute.
Yeah.
There's also something spicy in it, like red chili peppers.
Yes. And if when you put it in the mouth, it's a little bit more full body than the previous one. Like 14 was also like it was not a very it was a very rainy year. During the winter, even during the summer, you didn't have these hot summers that are so common in Douro Valley. So it was like it was not a typical year. So even the wines are more elegant. They are not so concentrated, and you can find that in this colheita. So 2014 was not like this concentrated year, but instead of that, we have like more elegant wines, and that's also very, very interesting to find in ports. So of course, the aging is going to give all the complexity, but the wine where you start, it's very, very important to understand all the things that will happen during the aging.
Yeah, because this one is very that's the last one, the 10-year-old white, matured in wood. It's much more structured. It's a bit grippy, also a little bit like tannins. But I thought, okay, they're not tannins because it's white, but yeah, in your mouth, it's like there's happening a lot, and also a lot of red chili peppers, but also
Yeah.
like jalapeno. But it's not too spicy because then the sweetness kicks in, and the almonds and the marzipan, and then you feel like a little bit of dancing in your mouth, and you think, okay, but it's a little bit confusing. But what's happening? And yeah,
Well, like one of the things that I think it's like it's quite exciting in this kind of port is that all of them are different. Every time that you taste it, you are going to feel different things because you have so many different layers of flavors and even things to taste that you really need time. You need like sit down, enjoy, and well, thinking good things normally helps. And at the same time, you are going to feel different kinds of things. And the complexity with time, with aging, it's going to increase always.
so when you buy these bottles, you can still forget them and leave them for a while
Yes, you
because
can, like when we bottle these wines, the tone is silent, the white aged in the barrels. We when we bottle them, they are ready to drink. So normally people, when you buy a vintage, you normally buy it and you forget it. And it's going to age in the bottle. It's the only part that we do in such a vintage to age, to really age in the bottle. The other ones, when we put them in the bottles, they are ready to drink, but you can keep them. Of course, of course they are going to change in the bottle because until the time that we bottle it, they were in barrels, so they were like having like this very micro oxidation through the wood. When you put them in the bottles, well, they are going to become in a different kind of environment, so they are going to change, and you can keep it as long as you want. Of course, when you open them after we bottle it, perhaps you are going to feel more the freshness. Um, if you keep them like for a few months or even years, uh, you should always make them breathe before you drink it as a vintage. Okay, because if they are too, they are in a bottle completely closed. After a while, you should all like because it's an oxidized wine, people sometimes think, oh no, because it's already oxidized wine. But if you keep it for a long time in a bottle, you should also decanting it. It's but you can keep it. No problem. These kind of wines are always you have always this guarantee. Of course, sometimes they are going to appear better, others but they are always going to be good.
Yeah, you can keep them, but please don't just buy it later, because then
Yeah.
you have then you have the freshness that you want.
Yes, I think that's what normally we advise. But well, if you want to buy it, keep it, of course you can do it. But we are always bottling them. If you request us, we are going to bottle it for you. So I think you should have it the fresher, better.
Yeah, and it always says on the label when it's bottled.
Yes, you can always.
I
Don't
have to
worry.
open the door. Sorry.
Okay, don't worry.
Who is at the door? Hi.
Opening. Yes.
Sorry, ik zit in een. Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm recording a podcast now.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. It's good.
Somebody asking for money. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm recording. I'm working.
Okay.
Yeah. Shall we continue with the other wines in the same
Yes.
glasses?
Yes, you can do it in same glass. I've already put mine in others, but you can continue in the same. No problem. So the first ones
Let's
in the
continue
white,
to the other ones.
I already have mine.
Oh, you're very well prepared. Oh, look at this color.
Yes. In this ones, we are going to start with the 20 years old, and then we'll go for the Colheita.
Okay.
Why? Because, well, in the whites, 2014 was very, very young. So if we started with the 10 years old, that it's more complex at this time, we wouldn't have we wouldn't appreciate the Colheita as we should. Okay, so normally we start always with the simple one and go for the more complex one. In this case, well, I think 2004 and 20 years old, they are more or less at the same level. And the older they get, like if you go for the 30s, and we'll have like a Colheita from the 90s and the 30 years old, they should become at the same level. But when we go for the 40s, well, I'm pretty sure that the Colheita will be much more complex than the 40 years old. Okay, so one of the things that that we have to do when we taste is to try to understand which of them is more complex. So here, and I taste them before, and I think 2004 it's quite brilliant at this point. So I think we should try first the 20 years old. So 20 years old is a classic for people that really enjoy a good tawny and can afford it, and it's not so expensive as it. I think 20 years old is one that you should always keep in your fridge. It's the kind of wine that has all these different things that always remember as a place that we love. I'm not sure why. Perhaps because it remembers our Christmas, our home. It has all these very cozy flavors, like all the dry fruits, the dry figs, the nuts, some honey, but at the same time some cinnamon, some cloves. So I think it has everything that remembers us good moments.
Yeah.
And then when you taste it, because in the nose it's quite sweet, but in the mouth it's going to show this beautiful freshness and a little bit of bitterness in the end that help us to discover all the different layers. And I think that's what makes this wine so beautiful.
Yeah. It smells like a warm blanket over yourself.
Yeah.
Put on some fire, some wood in the fire. and but also a lot of spiciness.
Mhm. But then in the mouth, it's like explosive.
Mm. Oh, it's very different in up like the white ones, but it has the same identity,
Yes.
like the same spiciness. But in this one, it's more like the warm spices like cardamom,
Yeah.
cinnamon, and it's very warm and cozy.
Yes.
And in the
But at the
mouth,
same time, it's fresh, isn't it?
it's still
Because it's not.
fresh.
It
I have
doesn't,
a lot of
and it
strawberry.
changed. It
Yeah,
changed a long time. When after tasting, you have different layers. In the beginning, it's like more warm, and then became fresher. A little bit of bitterness that appears in the end. So
yeah, a little bit plums also, but
yes,
the
yes,
fresh plums, not the dried plums. And
yeah,
then you have some uh, uh, dried uh, lemon, but also some dried cherries also.
yes.
And it's very complex, but yeah, it's very nice to drink standalone. But I think, okay, where's the cheese? Where's my dessert?
Mhm. Like with the hard cheeses,
Yeah,
and salty ones. I think it goes very, very well.
yeah, it's very nice. And
Or even with roasted meats,
with roasted meat,
like caramelized, like the ones that became really crunchy meats, like I don't know, like I don't know how to say this in English. I'm sorry, but when you have this roasted meat, like very caramelized, sometimes with some dry plums or even I think it goes very, very well. You should
yeah.
try.
Also, I think in mushrooms, different kind of
Yeah.
mushrooms, and
Yeah.
and you grill them, and yeah, the salty flavors, the umami flavors. Oh, and also the colors, because we do, we don't forget the colors if you're only listening to it, go and
And
watch
in
the
this,
video.
yes,
But
in this one, well, the 20 years old has this um more red corn, red core. In the other one, it's a little bit more orange, but at this point, they have almost the same intensity and the
yeah,
same tone.
but they are very see-through. They're not as thick as a lot of people know port. They think,
Yeah.
okay, it's ruby red, thick, you can't see through, and it's full of flavor, red fruit flavors in your nose, and it's full and sweet. This is very complex, very sophisticated. If you want to try something but it's more sophisticated, you have to try this one.
Yes. So they different styles. So when we talk about Ruby style, it's like for people that really, it's quite easy to recognize all the flavors that you have in a Ruby, especially when it's young. Okay, well, after a while, especially the vintage, after some years and decades in the bottle, it will become much more complex. But in the beginning, it's quite easier to discover, to understand what you have there. So all these red and black berries, the acidity, even some orange peels, sometimes some eucalyptus, some mint. They are quite present in when they are young, and I think it is the kind of flavors that we are used to recognize easily. In the Tony style, sometimes it's more it's more difficult because we are not so used to distinguish the different spiciness. Even when you cook, and if you cook with different spices, well, sometimes it's easier. But even though sometimes you are always like, well, this smells something that I really recognize, that I know that I've already smelled it before, but I don't know the name of it. So sometimes we need more time to understand this kind of wine.
Yeah, I totally agree. But again, the same identity, very complex, but the spiciness and the fruitiness is there. A little bit less of the freshness, but when you swirl your glass, the freshness is there. It's very fresh.
And it's in this one you have like a more citric flavors, like orange peel. It's
Yeah.
much more present than in the other one. The other one seems like a little bit more warm wine, the nose. This one you go more for the citric flavors after.
Yeah. And for people who aren't watching this, the Colheita 2004, uh, we we're smelling now and we're going to taste it. But it also has a lot of like bergamot, but also a lot of almonds, hazelnuts, but also roasted almonds and roasted hazelnuts. But both of them, it's very complex and it's very lovely to smell. I want to taste it. It's very
Here the
fresh.
acidity is like
The acidity is more present than the other one, and it's in the Colheita, but it's very gentle and elegant, and the fruit flavors are more present than in the Colheita. And this is more round and elegant, and also a lot of orange peel, but orange juice also,
yes.
and the sweetness and the sour, but also a lot of, yeah, I don't want to call it bitterness, but it
But
has,
it's a little bit,
yeah,
it's like it's something that's and I really think that these old townies, when they are really really good, when they have high complexity, normally they show it in this very elegant bitterness in the end. That's normally they don't leave you the sweetness in the mouth, but this bitterness, this freshness, this plenty of different things that change every time that we try them. So
yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
feel like you're drinking a lot of sugar water. It's not like you're into a sugar rush. It's like a very complex wine. Thickness, of course, it's sweet, but it's not over sweetened. It's not like a Pedro Jimenez where it's a lot of sugar and it's like yeah, like a in Dutch we say appelstroop, apple.
yeah. I understand what you say. Exactly. It's like it has the sweetness, have it's and it has all this also this it's quite creamy, but at the same time it has this freshness at the end, this acidity that almost explodes in your mouth. It's different. And I think most of the people when we talk about sport wine, they are not expecting this kind of experience.
No,
And after you try them, especially these more complex ones, then you start to understand that, well, port is much more than sugar and alcohol. No, it's so many different things that you can find
yeah,
in this
and
wine.
you can drink it all day, all your meal, with
Yeah.
lunch or with your dinner. But for to make it not too complex for people, the white ones you can serve chilled, like between 6 or 8 degrees Celsius.
I would, I would try even less. Like, you can like serve it at 12 to drink it at 14. I think it's the perfect temperature. And this one's the town you can serve it like at 14 to drink it at 16. But even if it's a little bit less, it's better because after they staying for a while in the glass, the temperature uh, goes higher. So even if you like put them in the fridge, take them, put it in a glass, after a while, like 5 minutes after, they are perfect to drink. And one challenge is like try them at different temperatures and see in each temperature you really enjoy it better. The truth is that I normally prefer them chilled, but well, the old school people always say, well, no, I don't chill my ports, but well, try them. I think a little bit less temperature, they are going to be much more balanced than higher ones.
That's they're all good tips. And the last thing I heard a lot from my friends Nadine and Jan Jaap from they have a very famous podcast in the Netherlands, Le Club de Vin and Sommelier the podcast. They always say, okay, port and tonic. It's the new thing, port and tonic. But what kind of port do you use in a port and tonic? Do you,
So normally
do you use these kind of ports? Because I think these are very complex, not
to do
very cheap.
that, yeah. Normally, we always, if you come to Porto, if you'll come to our cellars, we would offer you a port tonic, and normally we do it like with a dry port that it's not so sweet. You can use like a fine white too, but normally we use a dry port. We use like 1/3 of dry port, 2/3 of tonic water. We put some ice, like a little, some leaves of mint. I really love it with orange peel, but you can also use like some rosemary, a lemon peel. So it's many different kinds of things. Normally we challenge people like, well, how do you like your gin tonic? This one you can put here whatever you want also and try different things. Like with rosemary is very good, with mint is very good. Orange peel for me it's my favorite. So try them and then tell me what you which one do you really prefer.
I will let you know. Uh,
Thank you.
and uh, because port is not a new kind of drink, it is here for ages. But what do you think for the future of port?
I think one of the things that we as port wine houses have to do, all of us, is like show more what we have. You know, like I think we were used to, well, everybody around the world knows sport. We already had our clients, but these clients are changing. And the truth is that these new generations never had a port before. So what we have to do is like to show them. And sometimes it's easier using like cocktails, of course. And I think most of these wines can be used in cocktails from the ruby style, even tawny style, for different kinds of things. And I think, but I really think that when people start to drink these wines with time, when you, because we already were young. And when I was like 20 years old, I was not drinking port wine, it's true. But then when I came to my 30s and I start to, of course, well, I start to work in this business too, so it was easier. But I start to see like people in the 30s when you start to really enjoy what you are drinking. Um, if you have the chance to start to really to taste these great ports, I think this is what we have to do. You have to show them more. You have to go to the street and well try them. Please try them. I think you are going to like it.
Yeah.
So and I think with time and with work, I think we are going to accomplish to show these wines to everybody. I hope so.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you really have to explore more of the in the world of port because it's not only the typical red kind of port that you know is only sweet. There's a lot of more to discover and explore. Uh, Carla, thank you very much for your time. Uh,
Thank you.
and
And the only thing that I really want to say before I say goodbye is like, if you come to Porto, well, you have plenty of different houses to visit. We have Kopke, of course. Please come and visit us, but there are many others. And I think take a chance, like please, and I hope you that next time you come to Porto, I hope you come and visit us. We'd love to receive you. So here or in Douro Valley, these are beautiful city and beautiful landscape in Douro. So please come on and see us.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation, this chat, this tasting. Thank you very much for your time. This was another episode of Sparks by Vinofunk. Join us in the next episode where we explore more different kind of wines, spirits, or innovative drinks. Maybe port isn't your kind of thing, but try to do it. Go to your wine shop, explore something new, and explore it on on the website. I will write an article on it. Go to vinofunk.com, in the show notes, everything. Go visit Copke when you are exploring Porto or Portugal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for everything.
And see you next time. Salut.
See you, hopefully here in Porto.
Salut.